Okay, so how worried should we be about a terror attack on America by Iran or one of its terrorist group allies? Joining us is ABC News consultant John Cohen, who is a former U.S. Homeland Security Under Secretary. John, you oversaw intelligence and counterterrorism. You have history here in Arizona as well, helping to form Arizona's Counterterrorism Center.
Yeah, it's nice to have you in studio. We get to talk to you by phone most of the time, John. Thanks for coming in.
It's great to be with you both. Nice to see you.
So you told us months before we struck Iran that you feel like we're in the most dangerous threat environment of your 40-year-long law enforcement and intelligence career. Did your hackles go up even higher when we struck Iran? And if so, what form of retribution from Iran or its proxies worries you the most?
I mean, we had that conversation, I think, in the lead up to the 2024 election, and we were seeing, we had significant concerns about the potential of physical acts of violence, cyber attacks, information operations, and disruptive activities by foreign governments, and all of it occurred. Right, we had an assassination attempt against a presidential candidate. We had cyber attacks directed at our election infrastructure and our state and local governments. We had information operations that sought to sow discord and disrupt the election. And we had bomb threats at polling sites across the country, that many of which were from a foreign operation that was well coordinated. And that hit polling sites even here in Arizona. Well, the threat didn't stop after the first of the year. We've had multiple mass casualty attacks, a vehicle ramming attack in New Orleans. We've had, just in the past 3 weeks, multiple incidents where explosive devices were deployed. We had a governor's house that was targeted with an arson investigation. We continue to see cyber attacks, and we're continuing to see information operations on a daily basis. Now we have these international conflicts on top of that. Ukraine situation is escalated. The Gaza and the Israeli operations in Gaza continue, and now we have a conflict involving Iran that initially involved Israel, but now has involved the United States. And the Iranians, are going to do everything they can to avoid a direct military confrontation with the U.S. They lose that war, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to stand up to our military. But they have developed rather sophisticated capabilities, asymmetric is what we call it, capabilities, to attack people who they feel were aggressive towards them. Cyber attacks, introducing operatives into the United States to conduct targeted attacks, and the use of the internet to facilitate lone wolf offenders. And one last thing, they've been very, very active in using the internet to facilitate protests in the U.S., encouraging them to be destructive and disruptive. So those are the things that law enforcement are concerned about.
When you look at Iran, also it has a pretty good network of other Middle Eastern terrorist organizations that it's sort of using as proxies to make attacks on Israel, on ships. It's threatening to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Does our attack help roll some of that back, or do they get more aggressive with it? And are we going to have to sort of go after this many-headed hydra?
No, yeah, I mean, that's actually a really good question. So Iran has provided military support and funding support to Hamas, to Hezbollah in Lebanon, to the Houthis in Yemen. And they very often will not just use their intelligence and military operatives, but those of those proxy groups. Now, Israel has actually been systematically targeting those proxy groups. So one could make the argument that maybe they're a little keeping their heads down so they don't get a Hellfire missile shot through their car window. On the other hand, we're seeing Iran has and is continuing to work with criminal organizations. In particular, in the U.S., we saw associations with Lebanese organized crime groups. And there's some concerns today that Iran may be relying more on these crime groups to carry out these acts of violence versus. So law enforcement will be not just looking for Iranian operatives. We're not just looking for operatives associated with these proxy groups, but they'll be looking for activities by some of these criminal organizations.
Wow. I was kind of hesitant to delve into this, but you've spent so much time in intelligence. I really thought it was an important question to ask. And what I'm talking about is this initial report from the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is the Pentagon's intel arm, says our strike on Iran's nuke facilities did not destroy the core components of its nuclear program, only set back Iran by a few months. But President Trump disagrees. Does it worry you that he's questioning our own intel agencies and also, in all fairness, how did DIA get that quick of an assessment?
So after a strike like this, the military will use overhead imaging, meaning imaging that comes from satellites. They'll use the intelligence community to collect, to intercept conversations between Iranian officials. They'll use human sources that they may have recruited. They'll get information, and they'll very quickly try to pull that together to assess what happened and what the level of damage is. But these are fluid situations, and unless you can get a team on the ground to physically inspect what happens, there's always a chance that you're not going to get it quite right. So they'll pull together as much information as they can. They'll try to assess, and that at a point in time that they feel comfortable, they will release the results of that assessment. Now, as we've talked about now for a couple of years, we're in kind of a weird political environment. And there may be political reasons why an elected official may want to discuss the results even before they know about it, or even say that the results were not as successful as they may have been. I think for people in my profession, you kind of just have to tune that out and wait until the real information comes in.
That is ABC News consultant John Cohen, former Undersecretary for Intelligence at the Department of Homeland Security. He's going to be joining us today, later on, not only here on Arizona's Morning News, but for a special program that is coming up here.
That's right. We have our TV partners at ABC 15 going in depth on those ongoing immigrations and customs enforcement actions, the impact here in Arizona, and that's today at noon on 92.3 FM, the KTAR News app, and of course the KTAR YouTube channel. And John, you're going to be talking about quite a few things that have to do with ICE and immigration. You are also a many-headed hydra.
It's always great to be in Arizona. It's a place that I spent a big chunk of my career doing law enforcement investigations. So it's always good to be back here.
All right. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you letting us put you to work like crazy while you're here. So how worried should we be about a terror attack on U.S. soil post-Iran nuclear strikes, striking nuclear sites? Joining us again is ABC News consultant John Cohen. He's a former U.S. Homeland Security Undersecretary who oversaw intelligence and counterterrorism. We talked last hour about what type of terror attacks worry you the most. John, I wanted to hit on that real quickly so we don't gyp the people who weren't listening last hour, but I also wanted to talk about what you're also going to be doing here later on KTAR. So what keeps you up at night?
So I think as what law enforcement's going to be prepared for and would be planning for would be three types of attacks. One, an Iranian or one of their proxies conducting a cyber attack directed at a government facility or critical infrastructure. They'll be concerned about an operative conducting an attack against an Israeli government facility, a U.S. government facility, or part of the Jewish community. We've seen Iran target members of the Jewish community in this country and abroad. The FBI has disrupted over the past several years several plots by Iran and its operatives to conduct assassinations of U.S. government officials. So that would be something that keeps me concerned. And I would be concerned about them trying to inspire destructive or disruptive demonstrations in major sporting events. I mean, look, right now, the U.S. is hosting the FIFA Club Games. Yeah. Very high visibility on the international stage. So if I'm in law enforcement or at the Department of Homeland Security, I'm going to be thinking about security around those types of high-profile public events. So a lot keeps me up at night.
Yeah. Well, that's cheerful. I did want to ask as well as, Iran, do you see the potential for a regime change there? Will this give impetus to the people who have been fomenting in the streets the dissent against the theocracy to say, you know what, let's get rid of these guys?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. When I worked in one of my jobs in Washington, I was told by an old-time congressman who had been described by Lyndon Johnson as the meanest man he had ever met. He once said to me that if you're going to do these types of operations, you better make sure that you totally wipe out the enemy. Iran has an incredibly sophisticated internal security mechanism, and I know that there have been instances over the last decade where the local folks have tried to take advantage of what they perceived as a weakening of the central government and gain control. and it hasn't gone so well. So I think if there's going to be an effort to facilitate regime change, we better go all in and make it happen. Because if you leave the current regime in an injured but still active position, that's not going to be good.
John Cohen, by the way, former U.S. Homeland Security Under Secretary, oversaw intelligence and counterterrorism, is going to be taking part in Immigration in Arizona today. That is a news special that will be here on KTAR, on the KTAR News app, and on the KTAR YouTube channel, alongside our TV partners at ABC 15. So let's talk about immigration, but maybe we should start here. Do you worry that a foreign agent crosses the southern border of the United States to perpetrate some type of a crime against the American people?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. If we would have had this conversation back in 2002, I would have been saying to you, because I was saying it then, we need to be really concerned, right? Because the southern border is such a large expanse. There's parts of it that is very difficult to secure. And it would be much easier for someone to fly into Central or South America and then make their way up and try to cross. And what we found is that's not really the case. There are easier ways to get into the country if you're a terrorist operative, flying into any airport from abroad, coming in through the northern border. We also found out that, oddly enough, drug trafficking groups were very against supporting terrorists entering the country. And there's even some cases where they threatened to kill terrorist operatives because they know that if the U.S. government were to be able to prove that a drug trafficking group helped a terrorist come into the country, it would be a whole different operation targeting them. But even notwithstanding all of that, we've invested huge amounts of money in improving our ability to track terrorist travel. The Customs and Border Protection through the National Targeting Center knows who's flying into Central and South America, knows who's coming to the United States. They vet those people against classified and unclassified information. We work closely with our allies down south to detect foreign spies, criminals, and terrorists who may be coming into the country. So am I concerned about the potential that over the last 10 years an operatives from a proxy group or from Iranian intelligence or military may have found their way into the U.S.? Yes. Do I believe that Iran has a significant presence, intelligence and paramilitary presence in Central and South America? Yes. Do I think that Customs and Border Protection has done everything they can to prevent and restrict an operative from coming in through the southern border? Yeah, I do. But having said all of that, that's why the efforts of law enforcement on a day-to-day basis and members of the public is so important, because when you see something, you should let law enforcement know. If you see something that makes you uncomfortable or suspicious, let law enforcement know. And if I could just say one thing about your opening about, should we be worried? What I would like to say to the people of Arizona and the American people is that we have made great strides, particularly at the state and local level, whether it's Phoenix PD or the state of Arizona. The amount of awareness that folks like the Office of Homeland Security have on cyber and physical threats facing the state of Arizona are incredible. And the communication between those who are doing the analysis of threat intelligence and those who are protecting our systems and our people in this state has really elevated. So I'm often accused of being depressing or scary when I talk. So I'll leave on an optimistic note, which is that we have seen state and local law enforcement, state and local governments here in Arizona and across the country really improve their ability to protect the community. So don't worry, be aware, but don't be scared, because law enforcement and folks are working to keep everybody safe.
ABC News consultant John Cohen, a former U.S. Homeland Security Undersecretary who oversaw intelligence and counterterrorism, joining us here on Arizona's Morning News, covering all things Iran, but also joining us on our special program on immigration in Arizona today. We got together with our TV partners at ABC 15, going in depth on ICE agent actions and the impact on our state. That's Wednesday, that's today, at noon, 92.3 FM. The KTAR News app and the KTAR YouTube channel. John, always a pleasure to talk to you, and good to have you in studio. We never get to really meet the people that we talk to.
Yeah, it's really nice being with you guys here.
Yeah, and I know you like Arizona, so enjoy your time here. It's only going to get to 110 by Saturday.
But it's a dry heat.
Right, of course, which is way too much like dry heave, right? Okay.
Thanks for watching Arizona's Morning News. Click to watch more from KTAR News and hit the button in the middle to subscribe.